Hey guys, it's been like 3 weeks, hasn't it?
It has. Huh? What have you been doing with yourself?
Hacking.
Hacking?
Wait a minute. I thought you were Carl.
That's my job.
I've changed. I'm now an evil hacker.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was wondering why you were wearing a hoodie.
Yeah, maybe that'll be one of our articles this week.
And speaking of articles, there are 9 of them because, and we had to call them because there were so many stories built up over the last 3 weeks that we had to just pick the good ones. Yeah.
Well, there were about 15 stories where the moral of the story was go patch. So, hey, listen, if you have a digital thing, go patch it, and now we don't have to talk about those.
And our clickbait title is China wants your Wi-Fi router. Should you be concerned? We'll find out, but you got to stick around through the whole show.
The whole thing.
Wow, that was so
darn
mean.
show.
So
mean. Listen to you.
Did we disable the button where they fast forward?
I know, right?
We can't do that.
Oh.
Also, I just wanted people to know that we're updating the website. So we're putting the RSS feed up there. We're linking to our social media accounts. And I think you guys got new pictures, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Maybe I'll think about getting a new picture for me.
Professional headshots and everying.
Right. All right.
I love headshots. Especially
I love
Call of
headshots.
Duty.
I love headshots.
Oh, Jesus. That word means something totally different to you.
It does.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the first story. 28 years later, Windows finally supports RAR files. RAR.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Well, RAR, first of all, for those who don't know, is a zip alternative. And anytime that somebody sends me a RAR file, I'm like, oh, geez.
Yeah, you know what? I've always had to install 7-zip to do RAR files. But now Windows.
This is very convenient. Do I need to finish that sentence?
Yeah. Now it's fine. It's fine. It's all good.
Is it all good?
So it's like 7-zip is installed, right? By default?
Yep. Yeah, and what's nice is, honestly, I think it's a long time coming. You know, Microsoft has been pushing the zip format for a bazillion years.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, it wasn't even Microsoft's. Before it was PK-zip, right?
That's right. Phil Katz.
So, there you go. So if you
and before PK-zip was ARC. That was the first one.
Oh my God.
In the days of Windows XT clones. So it also supports tar and GZ and many others. Yep. Yeah.
Tarballs.
Zips. So you might be thinking, well, that's actually good. And Patrick hinted at it. It's convenient until we read the next story. New .zip domains.
Oh my God.
Sparked debate among cybersecurity. Somebody said, hey, you know, we have .com and .gov and .net for, you know, low-level domains. Why not have .zip or .move?
So awesome. So awesome.
So Google introduced 8 new top-level domains earlier that could be purchased for hosting websites or email addresses. So they are .dad.
Oh my God.
.esq, .prof, .phd, .nexus, .foo, and for the topic of this article that I'm reading, the .zip and .move domain. Oh my God.
I'm going to say something that is anti-commercialism, which is when I go through my spam filter, and there's usually 100+ messages in our spam filter every day in mine, if it doesn't have a .com or a .net or a .org or a .mil, I delete it. I look at the email before I look at the subject. I scan the emails and I'm like, nope, that ain't me. Sometimes it is me, and I delete those too. So I'm probably never going to see these domains.
Well, no, but what's interesting about these domains is there are a lot of products like Word and Google Docs and Twitter even that once you put in something that is a domain, that's what they call a TLD or a top-level domain.
Yeah.
It automatically hyperlinks it. So I could say, hey, for those of you who are testing out this, or for those of you who need drivers for your brand new NVIDIA video card, just extract the drivers.zip.
Yeah.
And now that will become a hyperlink coming to my site, which is drivers.zip. So when they go, oh, that's weird, it's highlightable. Let me click on it. Click. And now automatically they're going to come to my website instead of it just being a word in a doc.
Yeah. Not good.
And there's also some other cool ramifications. I mean, think of this. Okay, so
Cool.
He's excited.
Zane, awesome.
I'm very excited. So let's say you had a zip file on, or you had a file on your hard drive that when you double clicked on it, it went somewhere. Maybe it says, myfile.zip, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to extract it. And when you double click on it now, because it's hyperlinkable, I can bring you to, instead of the browser opens up and it goes to myfile.zip, and you go, okay, cool. This is how Google Drive displays zip files. This is how OneDrive displays zip files, right? When you click on a zip file in Google Drive, it shows you the contents. And you're like, oh, cool.
In a web page.
So when I double click on it, it opens up a browser. It looks like Google Drive. It shows me the contents, but it's actually coming to my website and has the contents are all malware.
I love
Your
it
website being you, the hacker.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it that Dwayne's already figured out how to screw
that-
with people.
And that he automatically casts himself as the bad guy.
Right. I know, yeah. Because why not? Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, where else would I be?
Right.
So I killed this guy, and
I
You need
gotta
a
know
bucket
what to do
alive.
with a body. Oh boy.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited for the phishing potentials. It's amazing. I just before getting on here saw a tweet from one of the security researchers I follow, and they listed out a bunch of the new .zip domains that were just registered. Microsoft Updates.zip was registered in there. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of new domains that are just going to be super fun.
This is what I want to know. Didn't Google I mean, they're smart people over there. You got to be like have an IQ of 9,000 to work at Google. And why did they do this?
I don't get it.
There's nothing good that can come out of it.
There's got to be right now a land grab race to buy
they get
these
to sell domains. Somebody gets to sell.
Right.
So I don't think Google's selling the domains. It's more of a GoDaddy thing, right? Is Google
Yeah,
actually
Google
selling the
isn't in-
domains?
Well,
yeah. I don't
They
know.
are selling
Maybe they get a
them?
little kickback. Who knows?
Little something, something.
I don't know how that works.
that's kind of
Yeah.
like,
Figure that out.
selling bombs to terrorists, isn't it? I
Well,
mean,
there's a big business in that.
yeah, I know, but what are you doing?
There is a big business. Or more malware to hackers.
Wasn't Google's motto "Do no evil"?
Just be a doctor or a lawyer, something nice. Be a nice boy.
Was
like your cousin. Yeah.
wasn't Google's like mantra "Do no evil"?
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah.
"Do no evil"?
Was there a comma? Or a period, then a comma?
Do.
No, evil. Very good, very good. All right, so let's talk about ChatGPT because, it's going to take over the world and we should all live in a box and cut off our hands.
The first advice we give people to use this is when people first used to learn the web browser and they learned to use the search engines, it was okay if they didn't use the search engine correctly.
Right.
It was okay if they did something stupid or they just weren't efficient. With ChatGPT, it's like telling someone whatever you're typing in.
Right.
So this is an example where someone at Samsung uploaded sensitive code to ChatGPT, and it becomes part of the public domain. It's a disclosure. It's now you published it basically, and so that's the core advice we give people is don't tell it anything you wouldn't tell a person without an NDA. Because
even more than that, don't tell
post
it
it to a
anything
forum.
you wouldn't post on a public website because that's what it is.
And that was the big mistake. Now, it's a fantastic tool. It's got a lot of capabilities. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about how it's going to work out. I've written a blog article recently about, the overblown fear of general AI at the moment. But it's a great tool, but you got to learn how to use it. And the number one rule is don't share anything, as Dwayne said, that you wouldn't post on the internet.
What's interesting about that is that I was under the impression that ChatGPT did not ingest code that you shared with it and add it to its database of code that it can then tell other people about.
You're adorable.
I was under that impression because if you think about it, that's what it should do. It should not. It should not take input from users and then make that part of its canon. And it shouldn't.
And zip shouldn't be a top level domain.
Yeah. And I mean they're pretty clear in the disclaimer when you sign up on the site that, like, listen, anything you type into this browser, we're going to have. And we're either going to use for research or we're going to add it to the corpus of data or whatever.
All right. So it's somewhere a human has to decide
it's
this
not
is
like,
worth putting in.
We don't know that because it's not like they've covered themselves, and maybe it isn't as bad as we think, but it could be. And the problem is also, what if I can cross the boundary and get ChatGPT to tell me something based on what you told it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
we don't know
not
about that. We don't know are the conversations completely containerized?
That's
I doubt it.
They're not sharing their algorithm. They're not sharing their code.
Right.
Yeah. The least they should do is share their sources, right? I mean, because that's what any self-respecting journalist or anybody would do.
Well, the internet,
publish your sources
3 years ago.
You know,
the internet, 2001.
You should ask. When ChatGPT gives me some code, I should be able to say, "Where did you get this? Give me the source."
Oh, that would be awesome.
And
because then I would start asking for like AWS keys, and then I would find out, hey, where did you get these? And then it'd be like, oh, this one came from.
Never mind,
NSA,
I said that, Dwayne. Never
Google.
mind, I said that.
Oh wait,
I didn't
think
say
that's
anything.
Fantastic.
Move along.
No good feature goes unpunished.
Then I would know exactly which accounts to attack or which software.
I think that's my new catchphrase. No good feature goes unpunished.
That's pretty good. All right, so let's talk about the hacker who we discovered pleaded guilty to the 2020 Twitter breach. Remember that?
Oh my
Plugwalk
gosh,
Joe.
Yeah. Plugwalk Joe.
Plugwalk Joe.
Actually, his name's Joke. Plugwalk Joke.
Really?
Oh, the joke's on
okay. I get it. Joke. They took the word gullible out of the dictionary too, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. No, Plugwalk Joe. So this is interesting. This one is, Joseph James O'Connor, a.k.a. Plugwalk Joke.
He has 3 names, so you know he's a serial killer.
Right. Has pleaded guilty to multiple cybercrime offenses, including SIM swapping attacks, cyber stalking, computer hacking, hijacking high-profile accounts on Twitter and TikTok, and then was indicted for $784,000 worth of cryptocurrency stolen via SIM swapping. Yeah. So, and for those of you that don't remember, SIM swapping is where I can convince your cell phone provider that you've lost your phone or that there's an issue with your phone or you're not receiving calls or whatever. Whatever social engineering thing I tell them, and then they restore your phone number to my phone.
Which is scary because now you're depending on your security on some other organization instead of yourself. It's bad enough when you have to be on guard for yourself. It's much worse when you have to trust a vendor who outsources everything.
Yeah. Patrick, Dwayne, do you guys remember when .NET was brand new and Patrick and I were regional directors in New England, and so we got access to Microsoft's early training, and we were actually part of the training brigade that went out and taught it.
Yeah.
Do you remember that video of the bumbling guy who lost his phone or whatever, and he goes up to a counter and he says, "I lost my phone. All my life was in that phone," and they give him another phone and it's got all his data in it. They're like, "Oh, Bill or Dave or whatever his name was."
If that's who you really are.
But right? I mean, but it was the vision that Microsoft had that, at someday all these things will be in the cloud and you could just go get a new device and then all your stuff will come down just like happens today.
Right.
But
and we advise you against.
But at the time, they weren't thinking about security. So this video is actually, if we can find it, it'd be great.
Well, it's
go back.
We probably still have it somewhere.
Yeah.
It's like when you posted that Space Odyssey picture of people sitting at dinner and looking at, images on a tablet.
Right.
That was back in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So things do come true in sci-fi world. All right. So what is Hacker Joe? Is he going to jail? What's happening to him?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, his first mistake is if you're in the United States or one of the Western countries, you be a good hacker like us because the government will get you if you're in the U.S.
I see it here.
They're going to catch you.
Yeah, I see it here. It's the last line of the article. The defendant has agreed to forfeit the amount of $794,000 some odd dollars, which will be used as restitution to victims of his cyber crimes.
That's probably how much was left in the account.
Yeah, probably. It sounds like he stole a lot more than that.
I know, right?
All right. Well, crime doesn't pay, right, Dwayne?
Crime done poorly doesn't pay. Let's put it that way.
You got to be awesome about it.
Understand extradition law before you.
Wow, that's going
Dwayne's
deep.
hourly rate is $500 an hour, and you can reach him at no.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Russia because I love talking about Russia.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, what happened?
So this is where the FBI went in and screwed up the malware platform that a Russian advanced persistent threat, Turla, has been using, and they basically went in and defanged the snake.
It's the feel-good movie of the summer.
That's right. 5 minutes of action-packed keyboard action. Did he just Control Alt? I didn't see that.
And the music goes.
She's all up on this FN keys. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So I wonder, what are the jurisdictions of the FBI? So were these all systems in the United States?
I think the FBI.
I mean, how is this?
I mean, according to the television
CIA
networks,
is
there is an
outside,
FBI
right?
International that helps protect us outside of our borders.
Wait, so what's the difference between the CIA and the FBI? Because
CIA operates outside the borders, definitely.
right.
Yeah, CIA comes first alphabetically. No, the FBI has to operates in the United States, but it can coordinate with external. It can help with kidnappings. It can help with things like that. So if you have let's say there was threats against American citizens abroad's lives, FBI would definitely get involved overseas.
Okay.
They don't have like a massive overseas presence, as far as I know, but they do, reach out and touch sometimes. And this is one of them. They're starting to get involved with this, the hacking and the APTs. The CIA is not even allowed to operate in the United States, so they're supposed to be totally outside and operating against our enemies.
So getting back to the story, I love the title, How One of Vladimir Putin's Most Prized Hacking Units Got Pwned by the FBI. And this hacker unit is called Snake, as Patrick said, the name of a sprawling piece of cross-platform malware that for more than 2 decades has been in use for espionage and sabotage.
And Turla is the most common name for the APT. Snake's their platform.
APT?
Their tool.
What's that?
Advanced Persistent Threat.
Okay.
Basically, us but bad guys.
All right. So, okay. So it's a group, Turla.
Yeah.
So they're the ones who used it.
They're probably an organization similarly structured the way we are, Pelsar Security, but they're doing hacking operations with the blessing of Russia, whereas we would do defensive operations for the United States and companies in the West.
Okay, so it says Snake, the FBI said, has to date spread to more than 50 countries and infected computers belonging to NATO member governments, a U.S. journalist who has covered Russia, and sectors involving critical infrastructure, communications, and education.
So the way to think about this is it's like hackers steal this they get a formula to make like a deadly neurotoxin, and they're going to kill 100,000 people in a major metropolitan area, and they aerosolize it and they spread it, and they just gave everyone a flu vaccine.
This is where the music comes in, and it gets really intense. And then the punchline you just said, they give everyone a flu vaccine.
Everybody got the flu vaccine.
You're fine. You're fine.
Wah, wah. It's like, thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. So not really anything you can do about that. It's just one of those espionage, real world detective work and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting story.
I think I'm going to write a short story about that.
Yeah?
You should.
Bioweapon
You
that
should.
turns out to be a flu vaccine.
That's pretty good. All right, so we're not done talking about Russia. In the Washington Post, computer in Russia breached metro system amid security concerns, report says. And I don't think they're talking about the Microsoft Phone UI Metro.
Metro. No, this is the Washington Post is putting this out. So this is the metro system in Washington.
Yeah,
DC,
the subway system, if you will.
Yeah. And what's interesting about this article is, yes, it was breached, but it was this system was breached. It was a known exploit on the system. It was just not actually remediated when it was reported.
And the
Sure
system
enough.
wasn't patched.
Yeah, sure enough, kids, if a security expert tells you that things might go wrong if you don't, A, patch or fix a configuration, if you leave it,
Sooner or later.
things will probably go wrong. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because there are plenty of people that we will give advice to, like, oh, well, they'll, and it's funny too. It's like when I go to my doctor and he's like, oh, well, you're really overweight. And I'm like, well, what's your advice? Right. And he's like, oh, well, you should work out 3-4 times a week. You should switch over to a Mediterranean diet. You should have higher protein, lower carbs. And I go, oh, okay, cool.
Were you in my last doctor's appointment?
I know, right?
Cut out your Twinkie regimen.
Right. No more ho-hos and ding-dings.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ring-dings, thank you very much.
Ding-ding, ding-dongs,
Ding-dings,
ho-hos,
ding-dongs, ho-hos.
funny bones. Get rid of them all.
Swiss roll cakes, none of it.
No.
So anyways. Patrick's like, it's like you can see my snack cabinet.
Is that what that is? I thought they were books.
So, needless to say, it's like going to that doctor's appointment. The doctor tells you all these things you should do, and you go, yeah, okay. And then what happens? Next year, you go to him, and you're still overweight, and you go like,
right.
Hey, what's your advice? And he's probably like, listen, I'm not even going to tell you at this point.
Yeah.
You're just going to have the heart attack. Same thing with security.
All right, so the moral of that story is patch.
Well, in this case, I think it was somebody told them they had a misconfiguration.
Yeah.
So hey, the submarine's going down. You should shut that door. No, I think I'll wait.
Yeah, wait.
It's like, what could go wrong? Right. Last thing on that. My father used to say that some people will listen to good advice and some people have to learn the hard way. In cyber, it's never good to be the latter. You do not want to learn the hard way.
Yep.
Definitely.
And I can definitely tell you, we've run into situations, I can't go into details, where we have told organizations about an exploit, government organizations about an exploit, and their bigger concern was, why are you calling us? Then how do we fix it?
Yeah, right.
So it does happen.
Right.
It does happen.
All right, so this next story is a warning to bosses who should be on the lookout for their goddamn employees. IT employee impersonates ransomware gang to extort employer. Wow.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, I have this image in my head of this guy sitting in his cubicle and then picking up the phone with like a voice changer going, "It's going to be $5 million."
Well, it was in the UK, so
Bill,
be,
what are you doing?
It's going to be $5 million.
Yeah, and then he's like, I'll let the dog out in a little bit, Ma. Just relax.
All right. I mean, a 28-year-old UK man from Fleetwood, Hertfordshire, has been convicted of unauthorized computer access with a criminal intent and blackmailing his employer. A press release published yesterday by the Southeast Regional Organized Crime Unit, otherwise known colloquially as Soroku, explains,
sounds like a cool game.
It does, yeah. I play it every day. Explains that in February 2018, the convicted man, Ashley Lyles, worked. That's such a British name, isn't it? Ashley Lyles. Lyles.
It's a family name.
Ashley Lyles worked as an IT security analyst for an Oxford-based company that suffered a ransomware attack. Like many ransomware attacks, the threat actors contact the company's executives demanding a ransom payment. And due to his role in the company, Lyles took part in the internal investigations and incident response effort, which was all supported by other members of the company and the police. However, during this phase, Lyles is said to have attempted to enrich himself from the attack by tricking his employer into paying him a ransom instead of the original external hacker.
Oh my God.
Don't pay them, pay me. Yeah, and there's more to it.
Yeah, right. You could definitely see this being a very bad strategy, like, in a kidnapping, pay us the ransom. And one of the cops is like, you know what? Maybe they pay me the ransom.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, wasn't that a Denzel Washington movie? They did that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been the plot of a few movies, actually, where one of the bags goes missing. And
if not, it's going to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Have you guys seen, I think it's called Mystery Murder with Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler. Anyways, I don't want to spoil. I won't say anything. But
this is called biding time until the big story, and people are waiting for the big story. We're talking about Jennifer freaking Aniston.
I thought everyone loved Jennifer Aniston. What's up with that?
I know, really. What's up with that?
It's great. It's great. Go watch it. It's very close to this.
Before we go off on this, I thought this guy actually caused the infection, but he just piggybacked on
Yeah.
the fact that they got the infection.
He was just working there, and he figured out that he was going to scam his employer into paying him instead of the ransomer.
So what, did he just change the Bitcoin account that they were asking for and
I'm sure
changed
he
to
just
one he
changed the
had?
address.
He tried a couple of schemes, including an FTP server, but you'll have to read the story.
Oh, my God.
We ain't got time for that.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's turn our attention to China. And this isn't the final story, but this is a Reuters story. Exclusive. Chinese hackers attacked Kenyan government as debt strains grew.
Kenya is one of the countries that has been taking money from China as part of their various initiatives. The China Road and Bridge
Belt and Road
Corporation is who
Initiative.
they've been dealing with.
Okay.
And they can't pay their bill.
Road.
And that's become quite common. There's a lot of South American countries are stopping paying China because the dams they've built are developing cracks and starting to crumble just a few years in.
That'll learn you to buy stuff off the Facebook ads that it seems too cheap to be real, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Half-price bridges and dams.
Well, and this one's interesting because Africa borrowed $160 billion from China to fix a bunch of infrastructure, and China's literally trying to put this system of waterways and railways and roads and bridges and whatnot.
They just gave them the money, and then Kenya shopped at Alibaba for it, right? I think.
Yeah. Well, actually, they have to use Chinese firms to build this. So it's basically China lending money to countries in the South, making them use Chinese companies to spend that money doing construction.
Yeah.
In many cases, it's shoddy workmanship. It's bad materials, things like that, and then coercing the governments afterwards by saying, well, you can't pay back. It's like a bad adult film, so you can't pay your rent.
Yeah. Well, what can you do to make it up to us?
So that we can work on something out.
Well, they end up taking ownership of ports. They end up taking ownership of natural gas fields, things like that.
That's not good.
No.
Right. Well, so it's interesting. So, Kenya put over $9 billion worth of this back into railways and ports and highways and roads and that sort of stuff. So, I think a lot of the infrastructure is probably better off than it was. But the real sort of crux of the story here is, they weren't able, they're falling behind on their payments paying back China. So what does China do, right? China doesn't go, listen, it's okay, buddy. We understand, we'll give you a little bit more time.
Nope,
China
they hack the government.
Actually, they start with, that's a nice giraffe you got around here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
It'd be a real shame if something happened to it.
So needless to say, they hacked into the government and started rifling around to see where's all the money going? Almost like a parent who's like, oh, you can't pay your bill, your car bill, son. Great, let me see. What are you spending your money on?
Yeah, let's have a talk about your finances.
Right. I think you've had that conversation in the last 12 months, and that's why you bring up that example.
With the Chinese government, he has.
Yeah, it seems a little heavy-handed for China to then break into the government. Right, exactly, and start rifling through all their finances to see why they haven't paid.
Was it sabotage so that they could, make these claims and own the ports? Because maybe that's what they wanted in the first place?
Yeah.
You would think so. I don't know.
Well, I mean, they're lending money to countries that probably can't pay back.
Right.
Unless the economy does really well, and the economy hasn't been doing real well.
From China's perspective, it's like, how much would it cost to own these ports?
Right. Yeah. Right. And 160 billion is not so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, hasn't China really, over the last, 20 years, that was kind of their plan for economic success was do all these projects.
Yep.
And it was at home, and now they have no projects at home. So they're like, well, let's go do it in
all right.
Africa.
Now I want to just disclaim here.
That's true.
What we're speculating on is pure speculation for comedic effect.
Speculation.
This is primarily a comedy entertainment show.
Oh, you're trying to preserve your ability to go to China?
No,
that ship has sailed.
No. I'm just saying, there may be some Chinese Americans listening to us, or Chinese, I don't know. And, they may think that we're being unfairly speculating about the duplicitousness of the Chinese government which, as we all know, is a completely pure and honest and non-corrupt government. There, I said it. Now let's make fun of them some more.
And I think everybody's duplicitous.
Now that stupid disclaimer's out of the way, let's talk about your home router and why the Chinese government wants it.
Oh, so this is awesome, too.
Yeah, this was published May 16th in Ars Technica. Malware turns home routers into proxies for Chinese state-sponsored hackers. So this is a state-level threat.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about this is, listen, the internet as a whole, the internet community as a whole that's routing traffic and whatnot, whether it's Microsoft or whoever, they're getting really good at looking for malicious traffic.
Right.
There are, web application firewalls out there. There are endpoint detection systems like antivirus and that sort of stuff that are really good about, that is that IP address over there, that we know that's associated with hacking, and shutting it down. So the best way now for, state-sponsored actors to have a network that can be trusted is to create it. So what they've done is they've created this firmware that will initially be able to be installed on TP-Link routers, and it allows for almost think like a Tor network. So for those of you who haven't played around with Tor, Tor
That's the dark web incarnate.
It is. It's the dark web incarnate. So you can log into a Tor network and you can have your traffic routed through this encrypted network and then come out anywhere in the world. Problem is, a lot of the endpoints are very public, right? So most people know what those IPs are. So you can't use it legitimately as a command and control structure or C2 structure. So, what does the Chinese government do? They say, hey, listen, wouldn't it be great to have our own mesh network that we can route command and control traffic through? And if we could do that with just anybody's home piece, anybody's home router, well, great, right? We'll just use hundreds of thousands of American citizens' homes routers and
but
we'll
they're
route
only
traffic that way.
TP-Link routers or Netgear or anything else?
Interestingly enough, the initial firmware found was designed for a TP-Link router, but they took painful, time and effort into making the firmware as agnostic as possible. So it would be very easy for them to move this over to some other router.
Yeah.
Probably anything that uses a squash FS or something like those lines. So this sounds super scary, right? Oh my gosh, state-sponsored actors, APTs from China attacking just regular old home people. We're kind of in trouble. Set your routers on fire and that sort of stuff. And it's not really that.
All right, it was just clickbait, but not really.
Yeah, this is a little bit more hype than anything else. Interestingly enough, yes, there is this firmware, and yes, it can turn your router into a C2 structure, and yes, it would probably be very hard for you to find.
It's like a zombie virus. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Your router starts attacking you.
Yeah, it starts going, brains. I want brains.
This is not a situation where they'd be attacking you. It's where you'd be, duped into providing hardware.
And you thought Tor was just a bad 90s hard rock death metal band with goth with a black album cover and dripping in blood. They're named Tor.
I think that explains the Tor network too.
They're not talking about any specific exploits. Basically, they have to get on the network and do a firmware patch in some other way. And they could do, at that point, they could do anything.
Yeah. So they need to compromise your network. They need to compromise your home computer. Then they need to figure out what your password is for your internal router. Then they need to go to your internal router and deploy it. It's not an easy.
I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I got a joke. So if a nerdy Chinese person knocks on your door and says in broken English, I need to see your route, I need to connect to your Wi-Fi router because you have a security issue, say no.
Yeah, don't let it happen. Don't let it. When they show up to...
You can take out all the qualifiers of who they are and where they're from. The answer is no.
Anybody
the answer
shows
is
up.
No, yeah. Anybody shows up.
I'm a router repairman, and your router's broken.
But here's the thing. If your router is wide open, you don't have a password, and your computers are on that, what if you have a guest network like I do? I have a guest network, and I took your advice, and I have an IoT network, too.
Yeah.
I think I think it would be worse if you had a remote administration enabled. If you enable remote administration, then there's a chance that you can use a vulnerability. So understand this. If China is after you, then they're using high-end resources. They're using lots of resources. One of the things that we do when we go after a target is we take the firmware of their Wi-Fi routers and their internet-facing equipment like switches, and we reverse it. And that's why Dwayne knows what Squash OS is and stuff like that, to see if we can find a zero-day vulnerability so that we can get on the system. And often we find vulnerabilities, they're just they're not conducive to what we're trying to accomplish. And so there's vulnerabilities.
So how do you do that, Dwayne?
there.
I mean, let's give some career criminal advice here. How do you find out, you like log on and it says what the firmware version is and you actually go and download it from the manufacturer?
So there's a couple, there's an interesting question. Because what you used to be able to do is just go to TP-Link's website or whatever and find any version of the firmware you wanted and download it. And then from there, most of them weren't encrypted. They were just a bin file, and you could use something like Binwalker and extract it and look through it.
Right.
And then router companies got a little bit more savvy, and they said, no, we're going to have the router connect to us and update so we know we're getting it from the right place. And that's okay, because all you need to do is then route all your traffic through a proxy, and you can then pull down the bin file that way as it comes to your router. And they said, no. What we're going to do is we're going to encrypt it, so that way you can't read it on the way through, and then the router is going to decrypt it. Good. So then all I do is take the router apart, and I attach a bus pirate or a JTagulator or a whatever.
You should be very afraid, kids. Very, very afraid.
To the firmware chips.
Dwayne.
And
if
you
Dwayne
pull the
shows
firmware
up at your
directly off the
house
chip.
with a pocket protector and says he needs to look at send him away. In fact, take his phone, step on it, crack it, break it in half, set it on fire, and then send him away.
That reminds me of high school.
I'm sorry.
We don't send Dwayne on away missions. He's purely an indoor cat.
Yeah. You could just park.
No red shirts for me.
You could just park next to your house and you're screwed.
There are plenty of ways to pull these firmware off of devices and then analyze them and then find these exploits.
Now let's talk about that just for a second. That is a very, very high-end skill and capability, and you have to be able to buy the equipment and destroy it. And so that's why this isn't something script kiddies do.
You have to be able to read binary, don't you?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you do need to read. Yeah.
This is the pure provenance of higher-end security companies. A lot of the security companies you're going to see out there that do vulnerability assessments and that stuff, they don't do this stuff.
Yeah.
Because they don't have anybody, that does that level of depth.
Right.
But an APT, an advanced persistent threat, a nation state,
state-sponsored,
actor,
they could do whatever they want.
The U.S. Cyber Command, those are the organizations that have this kind of capability.
All right, so what can we do?
One of the things I do want to say is, although we kind of knocked this down and we said, listen, this is you got to have access to the router and you got to be able to install this and whatever. We have on this show announced several times home routers having RCE, remote code exploits remotely.
Right.
There have been probably 5 or 6 times where whether it's a TP-Link router or a Netgear or whatever, where we've said, hey, by the way, there's this thing where I can exploit your router and then I can get remote code execution. And that would be all I would need to deploy this firmware. So although we kind of tongue-in-cheek said not something to worry about, you should always make sure that your router is at the latest firmware, because if it does have an exploit that allows this, then the attacker doesn't need to know.
So what if I have a TP-Link router and I have the latest firmware and I don't have remote admin available to my guest network? You have to be logged in.
You're probably okay.
Yeah, you're probably okay.
I mean, there's no guarantees.
Right.
This
at
thing
least
might
do that. Like nobody's we're not telling you to go out and buy another brand of router.
Nope. You
don't need to do that.
No, because honestly, this could be easily shifted to other routers. It's just more, make sure your routers are always up to date. Make sure that remote administration on your routers is not turned on.
Ever.
And you're probably okay.
Remote administration meaning you can get there through an internet routable IP address.
Correct. When you're in a hotel room, you can manage your router. So can the bad guys.
Yeah, but if it's 192.168.1.1
internal routable, just from your network. You want to you have to be able to manage it inside your network.
Yeah.
But there's a little button on most routers configuration page for remote administration.
And don't have your pet's name 123 as the password for your admin. Not Fluffy 123, not Scamper 123.
Or if you're one of our targets, then do.
Yeah.
Use a password manager even for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely for that.
By the way, how's Bitwarden working for you guys, or are you using it?
Good. Yeah, actually, we have been using it quite a bit. I like it.
Yeah, I love it.
Haven't really run into any issues with it. We're running our own server.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I don't have autofill turned on. I don't do any of that.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah, I think it's pretty solid.
It's a little less convenient, but it's more convenient than like keeping a book, a
Right.
paper
A password book.
Password book, because only idiots do that.
Who does that?
only gun happy New Hampshireites do that.
I don't have a paper copy. There's no paper copies.
Oh, you say that now.
He's shredding things, folks.
You know what? And
What's that sound?
I resent the gun nut. I like knives too.
Oh.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
All right. Well,
opportunity.
we're trying to make up for 3 weeks, and sorry about that. It was really just a scheduling thing, and we're not going away. We're here. So, with any luck, we'll be back next week.
All right.
See you later.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.